This video will dissect and explain why Makima and Denji cried after watching the 1959 anti-war Soviet film Ballad of a Soldier. This piece of art is like no other, and by the end of it, I myself cried too, and I think you will as well. So let's dive into the film first, dissecting each scene beat by beat, and later in the video fully explaining why Makima and Denji cried. I will also be releasing more Chainsaw Man Reze art content this week and next week, so be sure to subscribe now so you don't miss a thing. This video isn't possible without my partner GamerSubs, who are having a huge 20% off sale when you use my partner code CTactics. Not only will you get a commission, but you will get a decent discount, 20% on everything from waifu cups, high quality t-shirts, waifu and husbando merch, and of course their unique and scrumptious flavor in both caffeine and caffeine-free. This promotion ends on October 31st, so help support the channel and what we do here. Order when you can. The film opens with a woman walking through a small town with a dirt road as kids run by her as they play and giggle. And as she passes a young couple with a baby, they look back with contemplative faces as she walks along a lonesome dirt road. Turns out that this road is to their small village, and this woman is waiting for her son, Alyosha, to return from war. But she will be waiting forever, as he did not return. It is striking to me when the narrator speaks and says that her son is dead and buried in a village far away, in a foreign land, and with a foreign name, showing the deep cut of isolation that the mother and son are both feeling, or at least one half is. His son is simply known as of this point as a Russian soldier to the men and women who bring the grave flowers. And the contrast continues to be stark, as while the people know him as the Russian soldier, the hero who liberated them, to his mother, she is the woman who knows everything about him. That juxtaposition couldn't be more harsh and more heart-wrenching.
Они называют его русским солдатом, героем-освободителем. А для нее он был просто сын, мальчик, о котором она знала все от самого рождения до того дня, когда он уходил по этой дороге на фронт.
We transition to what will be the setup for the main plot and goals of this film. On the war front, with tanks rolling in over the hills as they rain down fire on their enemies, below, a group of huddled Russian soldiers. Finch, who is later revealed to be Alyosha, screams out to their commanding officers over the radio. We see a soldier hit in the body, immediately going limp, and while the film's special effects are somewhat outdated by this point in time, it was still pretty shocking to see how well the actor portrayed this instant death. We then see a pretty awesome shot of a tank chasing Finch across the battlefield, almost ad nauseum, until Finch is able to use an anti-tank rifle to destroy it, almost as if it were a monster in a horror film. I believe the rifle he used, by the way, in this film is the PTRS-41, which is an anti-tank Russian rifle in real life. But the tone slows down the heartbreak pace and frenzy to a halt as later that day, Private Skvortsov, or Finch, reports to his now injured commander. He recounts the events to his general, in which he is given a citation for his work on destroying one of the enemy's tanks. But Skvortsov wants to go home instead to see his mother. He is then asked his age, to which he says he is 19, just a kid, and wants to go back to properly say goodbye to his mother. You can see the regret on his face and how much he misses his home and his mother as of this moment, showing that while he can still take down tanks, he is still youthful and has a soft spot and is still just a 19-year-old kid. But his general tells him that this is a war, and while they would all love to go home, he cannot, just as they all cannot. However, all of the men and his generals allow him the day off to literally go and fix his mama's roof. However, he is much more generous than that and gives him 6 days to go and what he needs to do, as the route to and back will take 2 days each, and he wants to give him 2 days to fix the roof. So basically, in total, he gets 6 days. I just love the way they portrayed his fellow soldiers all smiling and giddy, happy to give a kid a bit of peace. But on his way back home, Sergei, a fellow soldier, gives him a letter to take to his wife Liza, who lives next to his hometown, and since he will need to take a train there anyways, he promises to go. Sergei gives him a present to take Liza, a very rare bar of soap which is a commodity on the front. I really love how they portrayed brotherhood between the soldiers. It really does feel like they all want everyone to be happy, which is a common theme in war films between soldiers, but here it feels so much more wholesome because the only things they have to give Liza are items which essentially sustain their life, or, well, if you think about it, their rations. If that isn't love, then, my friends, love does not exist.
Что из того? Серег, ты бы подарок подарил какой-нибудь? А что им подарить? У него же все казенное. Кончай разговоры!
He eventually makes his way to Chekhov, where he meets an injured and now retiring soldier who helps carry his luggage for. The contrast between these two are so good, and I feel like the actor for Skvortsov totally nails the bright-eyed and bushy-tailed young soldier because he contrasts very well with this deep-voiced and bitter man who he himself still shows plenty of youth, but the voice sounds like that of a hurt old man. But thankfully, he is waiting for someone. Eventually, as people leave the station to catch their train, Skvortsov heads inside to tell him the train is leaving. But he is staying and makes it very clear that he doesn't care as he snaps at the private out of nowhere. Instead of going back to his woman, he has decided to leave her behind, as in his words, she will find someone, as she is still young and still beautiful. And in his eyes, they weren't even doing well before the war and his inscription. You can see the guilt all over his face, but also the hurt in him as well when the receptionist, who is a woman, yells at him for leaving her waiting, because she believes that he is wrong. And the shot of the two men reacting to her words as the man lowers his head in shame. I just need to tell you all, I need to level with you. The acting here was so good. And honestly, the acting in this entire film is some of the best I've ever seen. And as the train leaves, you can see the woman holding her face in her hand while the two men look. He crumbles his ticket. Skvortsov, with his new friend, takes a cart filled with other soldiers as they all enjoy the banter about their women waiting back home, or in this case, of this guy, his woman, and the other man she's sleeping with because he's so ugly.
Кончится война, поезжай, дожались.
Дурак, у нее же муж. Тоже рябой. Нет, гладкий.
During this entire scene, the man is pretty much lost in thought entirely, in his own head, staring off into nothingness. None of the soldiers actually believe at first that Skvortsov destroyed a tank and was allowed furlough because of it. But he is able to prove it on the paper that one of the soldiers used to roll his tobacco into a cigarette, which is a common theme of this film that I very, very much appreciate how they so expertly articulated. Later that night, the man was still lost in thought. And honestly, Skvortsov is really cute. He really leans against him in his sleep, and you can see the childlike nature still within him. Seriously, this guy reminds me so much of Denji because of that. But as the man thinks and broods, an older gentleman sees this and wisely tells him that everything will be all right. The reassurance doesn't exactly stop him from worrying, but it does ground him, showing that the world still moves on outside of the war that is all-consuming. They then wait, and they wait, for the woman to reunite with the man on crutches. And at first it seems as if it is not meant to be, but a distant voice calls out to him, "Vasya!" And there she is, waiting for him to return, and so he has. Both of them share a very, very tight embrace, one where you just know that everything is going to be okay, which is a major theme of this film, and all of their worries seem to lift off of their shoulders because they have each other. The woman tells Vasya that she has been working in the steel factories producing high-grade steel for the war effort, and in turn has a small injury on her fingers. This is here to show that the war isn't one where the men who went off to fight are the only ones suffering. It is the women and the families as well they leave behind who are just as important in the war and support it just as much as a man with a weapon or a general with a radio. It is yet another example of the all-consuming war that transforms a country's economy into one gigantic organ that pumps the blood into the war that makes kind men and women killing machines for profit. Now, stick with me here, but it's interesting to me that when there is hope in a person, they can believe what the private did by taking out a tank, in this case, supposedly 2 tanks. But earlier in the film, he couldn't believe it, or just didn't care. It goes to show that as long as you have hope, you have everything. Vasya's hope returned when he reunited with his family. And this is why I constantly bemoan the people who have no hope or are only consumed with the thoughts of negativity. I get it, I'm there, I'm bipolar as fuck too. Which, by the way, if you want to give me some sympathy upvotes, I'm not trying to make you demand this. I was recently diagnosed with bipolar, so, maybe make me feel a little bit better by giving me a thumbs up. They're hopeless people, and that hopelessness makes them believe that, well, the world and the way it works is a zero-sum game. But life is not like that at all. The house before you lived in it existed, and the house 2 generations ago, well, do you think it existed? No, it wasn't there. It was an empty lot. And what I am trying to say is that life progresses naturally. It keeps turning. No matter what you do, no matter what happens, hope is not lost because hope is in many ways a synonym for progress. It's as simple as that. So no matter if you believe in it or not, it's real, it exists, it is eternal, it is just the way of nature. Progress may not be what you think it looks like in your head, in your fantasies, and what movies tell you, which is ironic, given here, but it is real. The house will be there after you are gone, and a new family will move in. It doesn't go away once you're dead, homie. So when you do leave, make sure that house isn't destroyed and that it is still left standing. We then see that as they go to leave, Vasya is missing a leg. This explains Vasya's previous choice of leaving her behind. Missing a leg, he most likely believed that he had outlived his usefulness because he did. He is no longer useful, as he can't walk without assistance, and thus cannot be effective on the battlefield. You can't outrun a tank when you're struggling to even hobble. And since the war consumes everything and everyone, he believed that he lost his right to even be a human. Think of it from this perspective. Put yourself in his shoe. If the military sends me home as I'm no longer useful and have missing, an entire chunk of my body, well, then my beautiful young wife, when she sees me, will be horrified at my grotesqueness, and she will leave me. Therefore, I've lost everything. I might as well leave my previous identity as her husband and move somewhere else in Russia, as it is so big, and start over and spare me the feelings of being hurt, because I need to isolate myself. I am no longer useful anymore. So, do you see how that can consume a man? It's a metaphor for losing hope. But reality spoke differently than the doubt in his head. The old man was right. He shouldn't worry. Everything will be okay. The wife supported him and was happy to see that he was alive. It didn't matter that he lost his leg. All that mattered is that he was still there, and she was too, and the world kept turning around them. The woman at the station was right, and he was wrong. Hope is eternal, and so ends Act 1. But make no mistake, viewer, this isn't just some happy-go-lucky film. Oh, this film will challenge you. It will challenge your hope, and it'll make you work for it. So, let's continue in Act 2. Bad news for Skvortsov. The lieutenant will not let him use the train to... Let me try to pronounce this. Jorgvik. I'm sorry, I'm not Russian, so if any Russians are watching or anyone who knows Russian, please do feel free to make a comment below with the correct pronunciations. I will pin it. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Anyways, they're going there as it is carrying strategic materials. Hay for horses. And get this, fellas, this is a line that is uttered, or at least this is what the subtitles said. I'll admit your hay is strategic. The single best line in Russian cinema was ever uttered at this moment. But this kid is on furlough, so he unintentionally bribes the very chubby soldier in charge of guarding the strategic hay. So, on the train, he awaits his destination when a young lady jumps the train. Upon seeing the private, she throws her things out and goes to jump, but he won't let her, as it could kill her if she did. Needless to say, she does not trust him despite the military uniform. But over the long ride, they do end up bonding after Skvortsov ends up sharing some of his, bacon with her. We learn that the young lady is actually a city girl, and Jesus Christ, is this woman gorgeous. My God. Continuing on. As well, she is forgiven for the slap, because to him, that was just a way of making friends. But they officially introduce themselves. We learn that the full name of the private is Private Alexei Skvortsov, or at least that's what the subtitle says. The name kind of changes throughout the film, or at least the version that I got. Anyways, the city girl's name is Shura, only Shura, we don't know her last name. And after nearly being caught, Alexei, or Skvortsov, rubs his face up against Shura. At first, I thought this was just some sort of creepy, outdated thing that happened, but actually this is a reflection of earlier when Skvortsov was rubbing up against and finding some sort of comfort and connection with the invalid, or Vasya. So this is essentially just another example of how youthful he is and how much he is looking for some sort of connection in all of the craziness that is happening around this war. It's actually really sad when you start to think about it. But this continues on as Shura pushes Alexei off of her, exclaiming that she has a fiance who is injured in the hospital. And you can tell, basically, this is a setup to be a lie, but much to Alexei's consternation, he backs away. As the train comes to a stop, the two are eventually caught by the Century, who is very much about his position in the military and, of course, his looks. Using his position of power to hold leverage over the two is the name of his game. But when the lieutenant comes by and sees his papers and that he is a hero, he is given free passage, and the Century is reprimanded for taking bribes. This puts the Century in his place, but also shows that in this time of war, a hero like Alexei is shown care and respect despite his age and youth, at least in the military. This is something that will be challenged later on in the film as well. As the train heads out, Shura shares a moment with Alexei, telling him that she is pleasantly surprised by the outcome, that he is indeed someone that she can put her trust in, since he is now, in her eyes, a hero. And what I've noticed about Alexei at this point is how his character is just always shown so much respect. This society truly does, at this point in the story, seem as if Alexei is the hero and everyone else kind of must move out of the way to let him pass. Even Shura, who, while distrustful, seeing that he is noticed in the military as a hero, kinda has to let her guard down at this point. Alright, character moment break? Okay, so this next scene is so freaking based that I just gotta sing its praises, because even back in 1959, this stupid fake debate between the genders that you'd normally now see in the vile depths of Reddit from lonely men was very much still a thing in the 50s in the freaking USSR of all places. If you can believe that. I guess that's probably one of the more likely places it comes from. You know, that actually does make sense with all the Russian bots on Reddit. The more you know, my friends, the more you know. Knowledge is power. Shura asks Alexei if he believes that men and women can be friends, because she has been told that this cannot happen. Men can only be friends with men and women with women. I know a lot of young people watch me, and so I want those people right now to listen up, because this is the most manly freaking life lesson you could be told from a Soviet film of all places. How is this possible? What world is this? Alexei sees that point of view as nonsense, because he himself used to be good friends with a girl. Shura is doubtful, but Alexei rebuffs that she was just their kid neighbor Zoika. As the train passes a bombed out and depleted land, he tells her that love is something a little bit different than friendship. So as Shura explains that she is looking for someone to be friends with for the rest of her life, Alyosha's pride is wounded, telling her she is doing the right thing by going to him, but that is not the reason she is doing it before cutting her off, telling her she is not like the other floozies out there. So of course, this is a man being a man moment where he is showing a kind of nuance that he is lacking in youth. Alyosha isn't able to properly say to her that Shura is a special girl to him just yet, because he hasn't realized he is falling for her. After getting the news that the USSR lost some battles, Alyosha, missing the train, leaving Shura alone in the cart as he is able to catch a truck from an old babushka. I've loved that word. I'm sorry. That word is great. Russian words are so fun to say. Anyways, after having to restart the truck in the rain and mud, they head off. The older woman shares that she has a son who is off at the front lines, as a short montage plays of all the effort it is taking them to get where they both need to be. Eventually, after trial and error, Alyosha and Shura reunite just as Vasya and his wife did. Turns out that Shura is quite the sweetheart and waited for him to give him back his bag. In the wreckage of a blown-out house, they drink some water from the fountain together. By the way, I love this through line where as they travel throughout Russia, they see how war has ravaged the land. And it's so sad, it's so dark, and everything going on around them, it's really interesting. I'll get more into it later in this video, but it's such a positive film despite everything around them literally being on fire and destroyed. Kinda just like in Chainsaw Man. Anyways, the tone at this point is much, much different as they are dependent on one another. However, Alyosha realizes he forgot to give Sergei soap to Liza, and they head out in search of Sergei's wife. I'm sorry. I'm just being a little silly there. They head to the barricaded and tank trap-laden neighborhoods of Chekhov Street to find Liza's home. But there, they find an old lady searching through the rubble where she tells them that Liza's home has been destroyed and they've moved to a different street. This moment was just so striking and also charming to a degree, mostly because of the Soviet verbiage and culture being shown off here, namely how Soviets spoke to one another as comrades. Today in our squeaky clean oligarchical society, at least here in America, you often hear that type of communist verbiage and see it and hear it and process it as a joke, as if it were never real. But this scene is a real big insight into how the culture of the USSR was at a civilian level, and it just made me realize and have a bit of clarity that, yeah, this was a real time in our life, and it helped ground me a little bit more as a person. This entire film did, honestly. But anyways, the people help each other despite the war zone and everything being destroyed around them. It's very dark and very sad, but there is a deeply woven sense of camaraderie between the strangers that are shown. Obviously, this is a USSR film, and most likely has many propagandized motifs throughout it. Themes, messages, overall, the works. But I do think this is one message that shines through as being lost and just out of reach in today's world. We all are so well connected today, but so distant from one another. There is a sense of a loss of communication. But in this film, because they all share a common setting and a common unity, the communication isn't all that hard for them. In fact, most people in this film by this point seem to treat each other with respect and dignity. From babushkas in trucks, injured invalids, and even more old babushkas. The war is all-consuming, and thus, these are the ties which bind them all together, like a string of fate. It's endlessly fascinating how humans rely so much on communication. Makes you think about human nature a little bit, doesn't it? So it turns out that Liza is cheating on Sergei with another man and asks Alyosha to not tell Sergei of what he saw. As he looks down on the woman for cheating on Sergei, he tells him to not look at her the way he does as he is too young to understand this, which, my God, this shows the selfish side of human nature and the ugly side of how desires can often take hold over people so easily. For her, it was being lonely and getting advances from a man with fancy things and sophisticated tastes to take her off to a world that at this point no longer existed. A man who has literally everything, including the wife of a man whose belongings are all owned by the military, including his body and his soap. Needless to say, but Liza is not a stand-up woman or a role model of any kind, but she is an example. It is one thing to sympathize over a man or woman wanting something to make themselves feel complete and whole while they are lonely and stressed during a dark period of time. I get it. It is another thing to cheat on someone you love behind their back while they are at war to keep you safe. What makes it worse is that this is the one time, the only time, where stuff like this counts, and she failed. That's sad, but that is life. So instead of giving it to her, he goes to give it to Mr. Pavlov, who instead is ecstatic to hear about how much everyone loves and appreciates Sergei. But what struck me was how when they leave, Mr. Pavlov gives him a message to tell Sergei that everything is all right, and to not tell him of what things are like here. This is in stark contrast to Liza, who told him in her opulent room with her boyfriend to basically tell Sergei the truth about her adultery at the front lines. It shows the duality of man and woman. Liza feels it is good to share with him something abhorrent while Mr. Pavlov chooses to keep something bad from Sergei. However, this gets flipped on its head when Mr. Pavlov covers for Liza, simply telling him that she is working hard and sending her love. I got the sense that he knows about the truth, seeing as Liza took the stance of telling Sergei the truth as well. Maybe that happened with Mr. Pavlov. So Mr. Pavlov, however, seems to be doing this out of some shame, while Liza seems to be doing it out of this righteousness, given that she sees it as more honest and fair to just tell him the truth. Now, this was fascinating to me because it has made me reevaluate a lot of what I initially thought about this scene. Or maybe the better term is to add more context to the situation beyond the scope of Liza. Mr. Pavlov feels that he is doing the right thing as to not compromise the hope within Sergei to keep him spiritually strong on the battlefield. And can you argue with that? This shines a spotlight in turn on Liza's selfishness even further and shows that Liza subconsciously doesn't seem to care about Sergei deeply at all. Because instead of giving Sergei hope, even if it's fake, Liza feels it is better for her to get rid of the guilt now, even if it takes away his hope. It's selfish. It's short-sighted, childish even. Which is why I think they showed all of the children playing in the stairwell. She is no different from those children blowing bubbles. It is just that Liza's toys, they look and they play a little differently. So ends Act 2, now begins Act 3 and the final act of the film. Eventually, Shura reveals to Alyosha she lied and was simply going to see her aunt after they share an intimate moment on a train packed with soldiers. I love how this film portrayed on the ride how deeply they both longed for one another, going from mistrust to having such a deep connection in a matter of days. It was a really nice moment, though I am not mad at all at how quickly they fell in love, because I don't think that's a big deal given all of the adventures and all of the things that they've shared and went through. But eventually, the two must separate as Alyosha needs to go home and Shura needs to see her aunt. Both separated and both with the same goal. We see splayed across the moving trees images of Shura that Alyosha remembers in the moments which created their bond. He fantasizes about telling Shura how much he loves her, and so he decides that he needs to get off of the train to tell her, but he can't. He missed his shot. He realized only when it was too late his true feelings for Shura. Let me tell you something, viewer. This moment hit like a truck. My video does not do any of this film justice. It just doesn't. You have to see this film for yourself. It truly is something that days after I've seen it, this scene is still in my mind. It's driving me mad thinking about it. So, on the train ride home, Alyosha meets a group of women, men, and children from Ukraine, which at the time was part of the USSR. They are headed to the Ural Mountains where their sons and plants are. After being asked by a young girl if he has someone, the train stops as the bridge is destroyed by an attack. After risking his life to save the children from an on-fire train and others caught in the blaze, the next morning, everyone treats Skvortsov like scum of the earth, and someone who is simply in the way. This is not even for a second, for a moment, what I expected from a Soviet film. Not in the slightest. This is when I knew this film was something totally, entirely different. This is not a propaganda film. Until the last 20 minutes of this film, Alyosha is treated as a hero that we need to part the seas for. But when the war destroys the train and kills innocent civilians, the people turn on Alyosha because the war is now arrived home. It's personal with them. And so they see him as something worthless since he wasn't able to prevent this attack somehow. It's yet another sad and dark moment which underlines that while the war effort is vital, people will blame the soldiers taking the orders as this is their only conduit for their hatred for the war. Is it fair? Hell no. Alyosha was just doing his best, yet he is not seen as that at this point, and he has to reckon with that. And it sends him into contemplative thought. Can Skvortsov really be seen as a hero for killing a tank when he just witnessed a young woman die? But this isn't going to stop Alyosha, who uses a blown-up door of a train as a raft to cross the river where he is turned down left and right until he eventually is given a ride into his hometown. There, he is reunited with the young girl who is his neighbor, Zoika, his friend and neighbor. as I just said. They both head out to meet Catherine, his mother, where they reunite in the fields. And in contrast to the way he was treated before, Catherine and the hordes of lonely women and mothers go to greet Alyosha because he's, grown so strong. He's much bigger. They want to see what's up. They want to see what the muscles, you know how it be. Alyosha, because all of the time he spent trying to get there, only has a moment to stay, just a moment. And so the women leave the two alone. Now this moment was very hard to watch, and I admit that I cried while watching it along with Denji and Makima. Catherine has missed Alyosha growing up into a young adult. He now shaves. He now smokes. She has missed the key moments of growth in her child's life, and he is a man now. But just as soon as he comes, he must go. And needless to say, they do not want to part one another. But Catherine holds on to the hope that he will come back to them, even though their father had died in the same war. However, this is not a story with a happy ending. It is one of reflection and one of loss. Alyosha leaves as the narrator tells that this is the end of the line for our friend Alyosha, who could have been a builder, someone who could have even helped the field grow with abundance of crop, someone who could have been someone but will no longer be, because Alyosha will forever just be known as a Russian soldier. This hit like a truck. This film is saying that for everything Alyosha was, or could have been rather, he's nothing anymore. The final image that everyone will know him as is the Russian hero. He never found his purpose. He left Catherine, his mother, Zoika, his village alone, and Shura is kept waiting too. Forever. This film, I don't know how this film happened, but this film is an anti-war Soviet film, and it's nothing that I expected. There is so much nuance and heart in this film that by the end, I felt like I truly reflected and gained something within my heart and my soul. I felt for Alyosha and everyone. I felt for the Russian people in this film. Even the people who turned their gazes from Alyosha and saw him as a bother or someone who has been worthless to them. I felt for everyone by the end of this film. Because all the war ever did was take away from them, the people. It took Alyosha's future and the future of the small village, which could have been much more than it was if it never had happened. It makes me wonder just how this film even got past USSR censorship. They must have I don't get it. It is so anti-USSR. It is so anti-war. Either way, I am thankful for it, because this film, it doesn't matter what kind of faction or nation this was made by, honestly. It really doesn't. This is a universal film that shows the kind of damage war does at home. It ain't pretty. None of it is. And to me, it only steeled my belief that war is nothing but a waste of time. And the only people who gain from it are war hawks, politicians, and the blackened and corrupt people who have no attachment to their own humanity. So why did Denji and Makima cry? I think it's much easier to dissect and explain why Denji cried first, obviously, for retention purposes. To put it simply, much of why they cried for both of them relies on a heavily referenced fable from Aesop, along with the overall context of Ballad of a Soldier. The film acts as an allegory for the world Denji lives in, and the town mouse and country mouse are used to represent Denji here. You can also use them to represent Alyosha and Catherine in Ballad of a Soldier as well. It works basically all ways. But Denji is Alyosha, and he sees himself as someone who is yearning for a deep connection. Think back to how Alyosha constantly was wanting to feel something by holding Vasya in his sleep, and throughout his journeys with Shura, as he would constantly have intimate and physical moments with her. Then again, with Alyosha wanting to return home to fix his mother's roof, and at the end, when they hold on to each other before parting for the final time. Denji in episode 1 of Chainsaw Man expressed how he wished to live out a dream where he could have an intimate connection with a girl. Hold hands, play games, eat good grub. These are innocent things Denji is mentioning, because much like Alyosha, Denji is literally a child despite him being a 15-year-old who looks like a 20-year-old and also is jacked. Oh my god, you gotta see the film for just his muscles. That's just anime stuff, you know? Just anime stuff. But Denji wanting to be the city mouse shows that he is constantly in danger, much like Alyosha is. He is not safe from the city cat, who often comes by to remind him of how dangerous life can be. This is represented through Sawatari, Katana Man, even Bomb Girl as well, though that relationship is as tenuous as it is complicated. We will get into a video about that later in the week. However, deep down inside of the inner child inside of Denji's consciousness, he wishes to simply return home despite the rush of all of the adventures. Because like Alyosha, he sees through his environment, through the destroyed houses, the ravaged of war-torn lands, and on the battlefields of the USSR, that he may be a comrade like any other, because communist nation, right? But the people around him get into various dangers and end up losing something in the city. We can see this with Liza and Mr. Pavlov, who has sacrificed a great deal, along with the children who play in the rubble, and the tank traps and Chekhov. This can only lead to the conclusion that Denji and Alyosha are one and the same. Denji, however, will forever be known as Chainsaw Man, and really isn't destined to be anything more than that. Or is he? Chainsaw Man is still ongoing, and there is much left for Denji to experience that you, my dear viewer, who maybe hasn't read the manga, does not know. But for now at least, this is a grim reminder that Denji's fate could be that of Alyosha, and that while he is the city mouse in his own story, is it worth it? Is the sacrifice and loss that Denji has already experienced something he is ready to take with him forever? As for Makima, it is the same, except I see Makima as Shura, or, well, kinda, which is, if you notice already, she wears a very similar style of outfit to Shura in the film, and also sports the same single braid as Shura. Once again, it is an allegory for Makima deep down seeing through this movie her own humanity and her own desires to be the country mouse, and the duality between that. Don't worry, there's a lot to explain. She isn't just the country mouse. This is expressed later again in a very dark moment when Makima explains to Reze that she loves to watch dogs hunt and kill mice on the farm she goes out to help her friend maintain every summer. Except there's a twist. Makima actually is the city cat. So, to quote Walter White, or rather Heisenberg, Makima is the danger. She is the one who knocks. She controls the rats through fear and through violence, but she herself understands that her nature is one that she both fully embraces and understands is something that she, deep down somewhere within the depths of her heart, something she wants to reject. The city cat herself wants to be a country mouse because she sees how she hurts others. She sees how she hurts Alyosha, and in turn hurts Denji and manipulates everyone around her. If anything, she is the symbolism of World War II itself during the USSR. She is the mortar that destroyed Mr. Pavlov's home. Makima is the tank on the battlefields. The injury to the general's eye. Makima is the reason Alyosha never returns home. She is the manipulator and the ringleader, but the reason she cries is because, despite being a devil with no empathy, she is able to understand and now relate to Alyosha through the message of the film and thus Denji himself. So, after the date, Makima suddenly embraces Denji. Trying to comfort him and show her human side, Makima essentially is trying to feel love for Denji here. She is trying to channel Shura, but she is no Shura. She is the city cat. She knows she can never and will never be something as innocent and untainted as Alyosha, Catherine, or Shura. And that is sad. And I feel empathy much in the same way how I felt empathy when Meowie was taken by the Bat Devil. Even the devil himself is a human. And there is nothing more frightening than a devil that you cannot dehumanize. However, I think there is another interpretation that can go along with this that is less flattering. The entire film using the country mouse allegory is a subtle hint from Fujimoto that Makima is, in reality, the real villain of their story. The touch she gave to Denji was simply just an act, while the touch Reze gave Denji was not an act. It is a play on Reze being a Russian spy who was acting when in reality she was always telling the truth. Some of these examples are her studying, crying upon meeting Denji, and her genuine laughter at Denji's funny antics, but that is a video for another day. The general point here is that Makima is acting, while Reze is real, no matter which interpretation you choose. So what do you think the allegory is trying to say? And let me ask you guys, what are you? Are you the city mouse, or are you the country mouse? Thank you so much for watching this video. You have to join my Discord before you leave. We need new members. If not, then click on this video for more Chainsaw Man or Frieren content or Jujutsu Kaisen content. If you made it to the end of the video, post a pair of orange hearts. Make it a great day or not. The choice is yours.